this boisterous anti-American. We see him aligning himself with communist Cuba, one of the last last communist dictatorships in the world. And again, we see this in Bolivia, but yet we see ominous trends, for example, in Nicaragua itself. The pro-democratic elements of that society were split, and they ended up with the Sandinista, the thugs from the old Sandinista Marxist regime, returning to power, even though they only had 40% of the vote. The 60% of the vote that was anti-communist was split. And that in itself is an ominous trend. And then, of course, we have the elections that will be coming up this weekend in El Salvador. And from what I understand, it's within a margin of error now. It's neck and neck who will be elected to be the government of that country. El Salvador has had a solid and a stable democracy all of these years since the end of the Cold War, since Ronald Reagan determined we would be supporting not right-wing dictators to defeat communism, but instead that we'd solidly support democratic elements. Otto Reich, one of the champions during the Reagan years, testified just yesterday that when Ronald Reagan became president of the United States, 90% of Latin America was under right-wing military dictators. When Ronald Reagan left, 90% of Latin America was under democratic rule and governed by people who had been elected in free elections. What a tremendous, tremendous legacy. But now that legacy is at threat because the people of these countries have learned to take that democracy for granted and to forget the basic nature of those Marxists and Leninists who tried to impose communist dictatorship on those countries back in the 1980s. Well, now the FMLN, which was a terrorist organization and basically a Marxist-Leninist military arm back in the 1980s, which tried by force to become the government of El Salvador. Now, since then, they have been operating within the democratic process. But this same group that would have imposed a Marxist-Leninist dictatorship now has a chance of winning the elections in El Salvador. Free people should be alarmed, especially the people of El Salvador. They have learned to take for granted the stability, the progress, the democratic rights that they have. The FMLN is made up of people who have allied themselves with Al-Qaeda, Iran, Cuba, and other state sponsors of terrorism. For example, the current vice presidential candidate of the FMLN, that candidate, 4 days after 9/11, celebrated, or a few days after 9/11, celebrated the 9/11, celebrated the attack on the United States with a demonstration in El Salvador and burned the American flags and claimed that America had brought 9/11 upon ourselves. That's the kind of leadership, that's the kind of belligerence represented by the FMLN. Now, the people of El Salvador have every right to elect whoever they want to head their government, whether it's the FMLN or anyone else. Certainly no one is suggesting otherwise. But obviously there are consequences that need to be considered when choosing who your leader will be. In this case, all of the cooperation, all of the economic cooperation, all of the stability that we've had, the friendship that we've had, could be destroyed if the FMLN, a group, a political party in El Salvador that is hostile to the United States. They hate the United States. And if you elect someone who hates the United States, then the people of El Salvador cannot expect that there will be a good relationship between our countries. Now, if the people of El Salvador want to have a bad relation with the United States, they don't want to have the same type of economic policies, fine. They should elect the Marxist FMLN. But if they want to be friends of the United States, they should understand that you can't elect people who celebrate 9/11 and say good things about Al-Qaeda and ally themselves with Marxist dictatorships and think that they're going to have the same positive relationship with us. In this case, we've had very positive economic policies for which we bestowed upon the government of El Salvador because it was democratic and because it was friendly to the United States. Those economic policies will not stand up if the government of El Salvador is hostile to us or hates us or is anti-democratic or starts as the tough guy in Nicaragua has done. He's already started to repress his own people and to use a heavy hand in the place of a democratic process in that country. So the people of El Salvador need to think about, what relationship do you want to have? What will it cost us if we have an anti-American government? Well, today there are over $4 billion that come from El Salvadorians who are in the United States in remittances. $4 billion from these people who are here, who are El Salvadorians, flow into El Salvador. Now, they're called remittances. Well, we do not need to permit those remittances. We do this as a favor to that country and to try to help its economy. But if we have an anti-American government there, that issue will be hotly debated in the United States Congress. If you have a country that's run by people who burn American flags and congratulate Al-Qaeda terrorists for flying planes into our buildings and killing thousands of Americans, yes, we will have an honest debate about whether or not we should restrict the billions of dollars that now flow in remittances from the United States to El Salvador. And I'm not saying that if people want to vote for that there, they have every right, and we respect that. That's democracy. But we too will respond, and we too will have things that we have to do to protect our interests if we have a country that's allying themselves with the people who slaughter our American citizens on 9/11. We can't expect to permit the free flow of billions of dollars to continue. If that's the case, that issue will be solidly debated if the FMLN is brought to power. So we need to make sure that the good people who support democracy throughout this hemisphere, who we helped during the wars in 1980s, that they do not then become complacent and take all of the democracy and progress that's happened there for granted. There was tremendous chaos in the 70s and 80s in Latin America and Central America. People don't need that anymore. They don't need the hatred and the vitriol that was down there and all of the anti-Americanism and the outside interference, I might add, that came in when the Soviet Union pumped $1 billion worth of military equipment into Nicaragua, thinking they were going to roll up Latin America. Well, brave people in Latin America stood against Marxism, Leninism then. They should continue to do so because in the end, all of us, whether what kind of country we live in, is in our hands. We wish the people of El Salvador well. We do. We wish them well. We wish them a successful election. We hope that they will remain friends of the United States. Unfortunately, there have been some people who, I know there's a large number of members of Congress who signed on to a letter suggesting whatever happens in the election, it's not going to make any difference in American policy. Well, those members of Congress, and many of them are my friends, they have a more liberal left outlook in life than I do. I can say that they're misguided in presenting that as to the people of El Salvador. The fact is that what happens in this election will have impact on our relations, and it is not just something that the people can elect an anti-American government and expect everything to stay the same. So I hope we remain friends. I hope the people of El Salvador vote to be friends, but if they don't, that is their right to do so. I think it is even much more beneficial for the people of El Salvador and other Latin American countries to remain good friends of the United States rather than attaching their future to the likes of Hugo Chavez and other despots and bellicose Cedillos. You know, these military strongmen who are in the right wing that dominated Latin America back in the 60s, that was a tragedy for the people of Latin America. And that was a tragedy that the United States did not oppose that type of authoritarian rule as much as we should have. And it was Ronald Reagan that turned that around. And I am very proud that during Ronald Reagan's administration, that we stood for democracy, not just anti-communism. And that with Konstantin Menges there to help us strategize, we turned back the tide of communism in Latin America and throughout the world. And we created a better world without having the kind of nuclear exchange or massive military fight with the Soviet army that was predicted so often back in the 50s and 60s. So tonight we look back on the heroes of the Cold War who brought about a more peaceful and a more democratic world. And we reach out to those people now in Latin America who are making the decisions as to whether or not they're going to take for granted what that was accomplished during this pro-democratic revolution that took place under Ronald Reagan and took place at great risk and great hardship for the people in Central America. Now is not the time to go back to Marxism-Leninism with another face. Let's again go back to Dr. Fred Schwartz. Dr. Schwartz told us that if you really read what the communists and the Leninists believe, you will see that they believe in the dictatorship of the proletariat. You will see the exact things that they believe in the centralization of power, the arrogant, we know what's best for everyone notion that results in dictatorship every time, but also results in poverty and results in a decline in the standard of living and results in conflict with other peoples. Latin America, nor nowhere else in the world, needs the conflict, needs the repression that will come with a resurgence of Marxist-Leninists who now put on a democratic face and say, no, we're actually different now. Well, maybe they aren't using guns, but putting them in power in any way will not make this a better world, or a better country. That is for people of each country to decide for themselves. We wish all of those people, whether El Salvador or elsewhere, free elections, open discussion, open debate. I hope that my words today will be seen as part of the debate here as to what we should do if indeed a change in policy happens and a change in leadership happens in El Salvador, so that we will know how will we confront, what policies will change if indeed the FMLN, which was a Marxist-Leninist a terrorist group back in the 1960s and 70s, whether or not that group, if that group comes to power, what changes will be brought about. With that said, Mr. Chairman, I would also